On today's episode of 5 Minutes of Cloud, we're going to talk about OpenStack in the world of containers. Effectively, what do containers mean to OpenStack's future? So in order for us to talk about containers in and around the OpenStack community, it probably makes sense to do a quick review of the OpenStack system to begin with. OpenStack is considered by many as the principal infrastructure as a service tool set for building infrastructure clouds. Usually people think of this as managing virtual machines in a remote API-driven sense. The principal cloud solution that most people talk about is Amazon Web Services, and there the thought is, hey, I can go to Amazon and get a computer for cheap. That's a virtual machine usually, although now you can get physical resources, and Amazon also supports containers in much the same way that OpenStack does. But that's the concept, is this infrastructure service. There are other capabilities that people talk about in the cloud space, things like platform as a service or software as a service offerings. And while there are projects to implement that capability within OpenStack, that's not the focus. OpenStack really still is principally looking at managing that infrastructure component, the thing where I run my application. Well, the big shift that's happening in the sort of the development community is this move towards using containers as the thing in which I run my application. And so the OpenStack community has obviously decided, hey, well, we should be able to support this. This is something that you should be able to use OpenStack to manage those containers. So using OpenStack in the same light as the classic, or now classic, I mean, it's a couple of years old, really, this new sort of rebirth of containers, but in the same light as Kubernetes or Mesos Marathon or a Docker Swarm or CoreOS Tectonic or Rancher's management platform. There are a number of these management services whose focus is the container as the entity that I'm going to manage. OpenStack still has all of the other infrastructure as well, so it can manage virtual machines, it can manage physical resources, so you could use OpenStack to deploy a physical machine with a container management image on top of it and use that to then manage your containers. So from the OpenStack perspective, there are lots of ways of actually implementing the container deployment model. But that's not to say that OpenStack is then a container management solution. There's still a long way to go before I would say OpenStack is the principal way that people think, oh, I'm going to build containers, let's use OpenStack to do that. But they're working on it. The way most people are using OpenStack and containers is to actually deploy something like a Kubernetes environment, a Mesos Marathon environment, a Docker Swarm environment, etc., as a set of virtual machines distributed across their physical resource platform. And from that perspective, it's actually kind of nice because you get the operations of the underlying infrastructure for the container infrastructure, the container services that you're deploying, in a fairly consistent fashion. So that's one way of using OpenStack as the manager of container managers. The other approach is effectively using containers for OpenStack. OpenStack itself is actually made up of a lot of different little service components. You could call them microservices, although I won't go quite as far as saying that that's 100% true. I think they do actually follow the similar contract model of communication between the different services. So a good example is the Nova Compute service talking to the Neutron service to get network information. Nova does not go and query the Neutron database directly. Nova asks Neutron through API calls. This is a classic microservices architecture model. One of the big pushes behind the container consumption model in development anyway is I'm building microservices. If I can deploy them faster, I can scale them up and down as I need to. Well, the same thing is true in the OpenStack space. So there we see people actually deploying all of the OpenStack services either as groups together, so potentially all of the Nova service components as one container, or in the case of the Cola project, for example, saying, well, why don't we deploy each individual process as its own container? That gives us ultimate flexibility. And the biggest benefit from the OpenStack operations community for going to containers as the way to deploy and manage OpenStack is you have potentially much faster upgrade, downgrade capabilities, service restart capabilities, etc. Because now we're talking about the restart of a process rather than the restart of an entire virtual machine. So potentially sub-second versus many seconds to potentially even minutes to start a service and restart a service. So that's really OpenStack and containers. If we review, containers are process-based segregation for applications. OpenStack is an infrastructure management middleware platform. And when you marry the two, you're either using OpenStack to support the deployment of your infrastructure, your container-based management platform, Kubernetes or Rancher or what have you, or you're using OpenStack, or rather using containers to support OpenStack, using those containers to actually deploy OpenStack services and systems. Thanks for watching. This was Robert Starmer bringing you 5 Minutes of Cloud. 5 Minutes of Cloud is brought to you by Cumulus Technologies, the company I actually work for, and we really appreciate the fact that you actually attended and watched this little segment. We obviously have a YouTube channel here, so please subscribe to that. We have Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. Yeah, I do actually find some interesting things to say on Twitter once in a while. And on top of that, we have a mailing list. If you subscribe to the mailing list, we have a free report, basically 5 pitfalls of cloud that you can avoid if you get my report. So why don't you hop on over to our website, sign up for the mailing list. You'll get that report delivered to your inbox shortly after signing up. And I think that's also another very interesting and important read. Thanks so much again for watching.